So to show another example of halation, here we have some Alexa footage, and I'm going to apply the 500T to that, and let's go in and lower our saturation a little bit just to pull that back, as well as our post contrast. I'm going to leave the pre-contrast off just so that we're feeding a little bit more of a high contrast image into the halation here. So now if I go full screen and hit play, you can see the halation happening around the door. This was a night interior scene that we were filming in the middle of the day, so we've got all the blackout happening on the windows. But as you can see, when we just open the front door here, you can see the sunlit exterior is overexposing and giving us a nice level of halation. So I'm going to go back to the beginning and let's actually try the 16mm halation now. So I'll display node graph and then drag that guy over. And for this, let's leave the grain as is, just so we can kind of inspect more detail back there. And lastly, I'm actually going to just turn on this shadow tone to give us a bit more of a cool look inside. And now full screen, if I hit playback, we can see much larger halation in the door there. And the halation is happening in linear space, so it is responding correctly to each stop of the dynamic range of the camera. Now, for the most part, I recommend not really adjusting the halation because they're set to a pretty realistic level. But if you did want to adjust it, you would go inside the compound node, and let's go back to where we're seeing our halation here. And the main thing to know is that the blur, which is happening in these two plus blur nodes, the value needs to add up to 1. So here we have a value of 0.8, and here we have a value of 0.2, so that equals 1. If I brought down my blur here and made it, say, 60, then I would want my blur down here to come up to 40, and that will make sure that you're maintaining a realistic looking halation and not having any over blurring or over sharpening in either of these layers. The top layer is where the warm halation is happening, and then the bottom layer is actually a monochromatic white halation that's subtly being added to adjust the saturation of the top layer. So the maximum you can really go is a 1 here and then a 0 here, and that'll give you some pretty crazy halation, and we can see what that looks like real quick in motion right here. And so yeah, that is very large halation, but who knows, maybe for a certain project that's kind of the extra extreme creative look you're going for. So here we've got some nice anamorphic Alexa footage. These are the Atlas Orions. So the original image is 266:1, but I've scaled it up here just so you guys can see it better on YouTube. But what I'll do here is apply our 160T, and let's cool it down a little bit here, and we can check out how that's looking full screen. That's a pretty nice starting point, and I'll just hit playback here. You can see a little bit of halation happening in her eye. Not sure if that's visible on YouTube. Maybe I'll zoom in here. But yeah, even those small details, the little pings in the eye, can be really interesting and filmic. So I think what I'll do here is I'm going to turn on our pre-contrast and then post-contrast, and I'll boost that just a tiny bit, and then maybe lower our saturation, and then let's adjust our white balance even the tiniest bit more. There, that's looking pretty good full screen. Actually, let's try changing our white point to a little bit warmer and then cooling down our white balance under that. And we'll see what that gives us. Something like that is looking pretty nice, so let's run playback. So as you can see, depending on your footage, sometimes all you need to do is some slight exposure, white balance, contrast adjustments, and then you'll be sitting in a really good place with the footage. Very similar to how you would grade actual film scans. And one more thing I want to mention and show here is how the grain compound node is set up. So I'm going to zoom in here and then we'll turn on denoising just to get rid of that. And then if I select my grain and then really zoom in here and then Command D toggle that on and off, you can see that I have put the blur and the grain together into the same compound node, so your resolution is getting adjusted for the size of the grain in a realistic manner, because that's usually a big tell of when grain is added in post is people will leave their footage at the original resolution and it'll be sharper than the grain, when realistically that's not possible with film because the image itself is made out of the grain. So the limit of your resolution has to be the size of the grain. And here we have some more Alexa footage. This one I'm going to use the 250D emulation, so we'll apply that, and the first thing I'm going to do is adjust our white balance and bring a little more warmth into the image there. And then for this shot, I think I am going to see what our tint curves are doing. I do like how they're adding some separation between the pool water and the concrete. So I'm going to turn that on and then adjust my white balance slightly to compensate for that. And then I think I will turn on the pre-contrast here and then adjust our post-contrast and bring that up slightly. I think I will turn on denoising, dust, and then I'll pull down contrast just a little back. And then I'm going to pull down the saturation slightly here. And let's see about those log wheel shadows. Maybe bringing a little bit of warmth into our shadows there. It's looking pretty good to me. We've got some very vibrant and lively greens going on. Skin tones looking good. Pools looking good. I'd say that's a pretty finished look. So thanks for watching the video. Hope you guys liked it, and I cannot wait to see what you guys do with the power grade.